Hi, I'm Bob Gimlin, and I've been busy at work putting together an extensive analysis of what I tend to think of as the Bigfoot researchers' road less traveled. It's a pernicious line of inquiry because you end up with far more questions than you sought to answer in the first place. Anyway, my soon-to-come presentation, as of yet untitled, will be a chronological, comprehensive collection of dynamically independent fields of study that just may be related. Speculations abound about Bigfoot's use of, quote, mystical powers. Some I can chalk up to accelerated perception, staggering intelligence quotas, instinctual cryptic maneuvering, or even infrasound. Bigfoot certainly has an array of powers, but I typically rebuke the claims of cloaking, telepathic mind speak, teleportation, portal use, and even the ability to cause untimely deaths through eye contact. I'm working on a 400-plus year case study of one particular area to assess if Bigfoot truly have superpowers, or if they are simply super powerful. I don't think anyone has ever done this before, particularly with examples from one given area and over such a long period of time, wherein the creatures seem to be culturally relevant enough to be documented in one way or another. But sadly, this is going to take me some time. It will either be one long video or separate, moderately long videos that somehow stand on their own. So again, this will take time. That being said, in less than a year, I have been fortunate enough to acquire over 2,000 subscribers. So I figure I owe you something while you, and myself actually, wait for the results of my as of yet untitled documentary. So I'm going to read a fairly typical report, in fact the most typical type of report, one that comfortingly points to a flesh and blood animal. The witness contacted a researcher and investigator named Laura Roeder, when Laura isn't investigating refrigerator-sized animals running through the woods at night. She spends her days as an IT consultant for Aerospace Industries Seattle. Not your typical Bigfoot researcher, but while utilizing her home state of Washington's national parks, she had her own sighting. Investigator Laura found the witness to be credible and lucid. The Bigfoot investigator/IT aerospace consultant genuinely felt that the witness thought it was important to tell someone about what she saw, and that the police did not seem like an appropriate source. What gives the recount more credibility is that the narrative is free of fluff and filler. Like the lion's share of most Bigfoot reports, this sighting was brief, distinct, unambiguous, and unforgettable. Much like the time I glimpsed a mountain lion observing me from 20 yards. The whole thing lasted a half a second, I have zero proof, and nothing ever came of it. Anyway, the witness relevant to this video had her sighting in 2011 in Skagit County, Washington State, on a highway within the Cascade Range, on a cold, overcast November evening. Like tonight, actually. This is her report. Quote, I was driving on the North Cascades Highway, traveling east across Rainy Pass, or maybe a bit before. It was close to twilight, and it was clear and cold. I see something that strikes me as not normal. It is about 1/4 a mile up the highway on the side of the road. At first, I think that it is a large man, wearing dark winter clothing. As I got closer, I see that it was clearly not a man. But just before I get a better look, it slipped down the side of the road, into the ravine. And that was when I knew what I had just seen. The way it moved was sylph-like, almost as if it shimmered away. I looked back to where it had been, and it had completely disappeared. Now if that isn't enough for you, there's more. About 2 miles further up the mountain pass, I saw another. It was a little smarter, but moved in the same graceful manner as it quickly went down the side of the mountain out of my view. The leaves on the trees that it had been next to still gently shook as I drove by. I cannot say with any surety what these creatures looked like exactly, but they were definitely not bears, too tall and far too graceful. They were not human, too graceful and quick. They were both dark, though. If they were at all reddish, I did not notice. They both seemed to be very dark brown, the smaller one darker than the bigger one. If I was to guess size, I would say the larger one was 6'4" to 6'8", and probably around 250 to 300 lean pounds. The smaller was perhaps 6 foot, and around 200 pounds maybe. The thing that was so completely out of the ordinary was the manner in which they moved. I've never seen something so large move so fluidly. Picture the way an otter or penguin moves in the water. It was sort of like that. It was around 4:30 p.m., close to twilight. The weather was clear and cold. It's a mountainous area. I saw them both on the side, where they quickly moved down the side of the mountain. The area was rocky and forested. It was very quiet. I had not seen another vehicle for approximately 60 or 70 miles. End quote. A few aspects of this less than astounding report intrigue me. First, foremost, and most obviously, the remoteness of the location and the location itself. She said she hadn't seen another vehicle, let alone person, for some 60 or 70 miles. And this is, of course, the Cascade Mountains, hallmarked by their remoteness and inaccessibility. The Cascade Range has cool, wet winters, dry, warm summers, like most other areas with indigenous great apes. Another aspect of the report, which I find intriguing, is how the witness described the creature's movement. She said the creature moved sylph-like. Now, historically speaking, sylphs were thought to be omens or spirits that manifested themselves in the wind. But a contemporary use of the word sylph that I have heard recently is in reference to hummingbirds, basically meaning that the way they move doesn't seem to correlate with what you're seeing. Something that moves sylph-like simply appears to move in a way which strikes the observer as oddly fluid or irregular. I imagine our anonymous witness has some training in literature because she chose a perfect word. The way the animals moved was so striking to the witness because, if you think about it, most of us see hundreds of bipeds every day, and we all walk in a particular way. The creatures that the witness reported walk differently than the bipeds that the witness is used to observing. Our brains function via patterns, and when those patterns are interrupted, a mental red flag is raised. I'm not sure just how these creatures locomote, but I am convinced that their motion is more elliptical than ours. They have a different gait that is agreed upon. How their gait is different, that is the matter of contention. Whether you call it a bent knee stride, plantigrade, flat-footed, a tarsal break, different spinal column alignment, or a compliant gait, these creatures walk differently than us, which shouldn't surprise anyone. Many humans or human-like animals have been bipeds, most of which probably have yet to even be discovered. And all of them surely had variances in their given locomotion, some subtle and some major. And that is what stood out to the witness. And that is why she didn't think she saw two people in the desolation of the Cascade Mountains at twilight on that cold November evening. And this is just one of hundreds of similar reports, which is interesting because there's only recently been entities to report sightings too. And as a rule of thumb, for every 100 sightings, probably only one is reported, possibly less, which makes sense to me. Anyway, like the video to show your support, subscribe to keep updated on my soon-to-come content, and as always, thanks an awful lot for listening.